Hey, everybody, this is Brian Smith, your host of Grief to Growth, back with another episode. And today I'm excited to have back with me for a second time P.M.H. Atwater, Dr. P.M.H. Atwater. We had a fascinating interview about a week ago. If you didn't see it or hear it, go back and make sure you listen to that. We talked about her film, which was As You Die, Remember You Live Forever. A great film, and we had a great conversation. We talked a little bit about her biography. So if you want to know more about her, go back and take a look at that. Today, we're going to actually talk about another one of her books. It's called Dying to Know You. But I know some of you have asked me about her near-death experiences. She's had three in 1977, and she's actually written a book called I Died Three Times in 1977. It's a very detailed book. We went over the first two really briefly yesterday or last week, but I suggest you go ahead and get that book if you want to know about the third one. So with that, I am going to welcome P.M.H. Atwater. Welcome back.
Well, hi. It's a privilege and a pleasure. Oh, all of a sudden the sun came out. It's been really, really rainy. And
Wow.
now there's sun.
Yeah.
So I may have that bleached look on the sorry.
Yeah, you're glowing. You look great. You look great. So I'm really happy to have you back. I appreciate you doing this. And we're going to talk about your book, Dying to Know You. And right off the bat, one of the things I want to ask you is your process for writing this book. It was channeled. You talked about you were on a plane, and tell me how this came to you.
Well, it's really not a channeled book.
Okay.
It is, but it isn't. Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience. So that's the full title.
Mm-hmm.
The book itself is very specific about what the people said. I want everyone to know that I call this book the People's Book. It is the People's Book. It is a summary of the various comments adult and child near-death experiencers have been saying to me for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt it was time that all of that be in this one book. Yes, that book has a little bit of research in it, but it's mostly a summary of their voices, their wisdom, their experience. So I call Dying to Know You the People's Book. How did it come to be, though? Well, obviously, I didn't choose to write it. I didn't. This is going to sound kind of like a fairy story, but it's not. I was seated on a plane traveling to California when suddenly in front of me there began to appear pages of a book. There was the title page, there was a contents page, there was an invitation page, and then the various pages, that is to say, the various chapters in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it just started writing. I mean, right in front of me. Oh, gee, I don't know, maybe more than a foot, maybe about 2 feet in front of me, just out in the air. This happened, and it was very plain. It wasn't mystical. It was just the book started writing itself in the air. And I've never had anything like that happen to me before. Yeah. I thought that was just kind of corny. Like maybe, I'm getting too tired, or maybe I'm a little anxious about where I'm going. I didn't pay any attention to it, but it kept doing it. And it kept doing it, it just kept going. So I finally decided, well, maybe I should take out pencil and paper and start writing it down. Mm-hmm. So I did. I just wrote down all the information. It just kept repeating itself. Mm-hmm. And so I just wrote it all down, and we landed in San Francisco, and I got off the plane, and, busy for the talks I'm giving in Northern California to a number of different places. And whenever I had a free moment, when I didn't have to speak or, be with someone, that whole process would start all over again. Always starting at the beginning and always, going through the book.
Wow.
All the chapters of the book, mind you. And it was a nuisance. It was absolutely a nuisance because I had other things to think about, other things to do. And bear with me in trying to understand that I was starting to get a little angry because the thing was in my way. I had to do this and that and the other. There was a lot of pressure on me to do different things. And whenever I had a free moment, this would happen. Mm-hmm. When I wanted to do other things in those free moments, this was in the way. Well, that continued until a number of my talks were done. And I stayed with a friend of mine. I had a little extra time. And we went up to more northern parts of California, and he wanted to show me the redwoods. So I thought, okay, this is fine. We'll go see the redwoods because I love the redwoods. This is just magnificent. Mm-hmm. And so in trying to get to the redwoods, we passed through a funky little town. I think Fennec a funny little town in Northern California. They even had their own Bigfoot museum. That's how quirky this little town was. And as we were driving into the town, there was a big, huge building for thrifty items, antiques. Everybody went in there for the precious artifacts or items they might buy. But next to it, much smaller, was a very sharp but wonderful church. Mm-hmm. And next to the roadway, it had a little sign saying something about a Greek Orthodox church. Well, I love, ever since I've been to Russia, I've loved being in Greek Orthodox churches. They're wonderful. So he made a beeline for the big store that had souvenirs and, these wonderful things you could buy. I headed for the church, and the doors were unlocked. So I went right in. There was nobody there. So I went right up to the altar, right up to the place where all the saints are. And I was just awed. I just stood there and I was awed by this beautiful, wonderful place. Mm-hmm. It was in this funky little town. So I got down on my hands and knees and put my forehead to the floor and prayed and just asked, what is this business about this book that just keeps writing itself and won't stop? Mm. And I heard a very soft grandfatherly voice, and just something to the effect of, sort of very kindly saying, I don't remember the exact words, it's in the book, but something to the effect of, hush, child, now do your work. That's it.
Yeah.
Hush, child, now do your work. And I knew what that meant. And I was just my heart was so full of that experience and that love and that caring and that incredible guidance that it's like I didn't need to know anymore. That's it. Yeah. Do your work. So on my way home then, I began to put things together for sure. Mm-hmm. And when I arrived home, and was able to give some time to this project, I realized then that a book like this has never been written before, and still hasn't. It has no equal. That is to say, a book that gathers up the voices of thousands of near-death experiencers, adults and children, and lets them speak. Mm. So I feel a sense of I feel very privy. I feel very blessed. I feel very honored to have put together this book, and hardly anybody has bought it. You know, that and maybe it's because the word God is in it. Like, the word God isn't popular anymore. You say G-O-D, God, and people turn off. But that idea of God or G-O-D, or that idea of Allah, or the greater reality, the greater truth, that greater essence is at the heart and soul of near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And a lot of people still say God, but not God in the sense of male or female. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no sense at all of sex in G-O-D, God. It's that idea, that reality, that truth of this greater force, this greater reality, this greater heart, this greater love that doesn't indeed exist, and is in and through us all, whether we recognize it or not, and that is real. So that blessing became Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience. There it is.
Yeah. You know, you touched on a really interesting point there. I was interviewing a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and she's had multiple near-death experiences. And she says she saw God. And the thing is, she says she feels kind of rejected in the near-death community because she talks about God. And I think it's fascinating that everybody has this sense, as you said, of this other, this greater, this ineffable experience of this presence or love. But when we put the word God on it, people freak out.
Well, I do now.
Yeah.
I just do.
Yeah.
But I also say that which breathes me, that higher and greater source or truth, mm-hmm. that is at the heart of all that exists. And then I let my audience know I still use the word God, mm-hmm. but not in the sense of male or female, but rather in the sense of all that is. And if that bothers you, then please know it is that greater heart that I'm speaking of.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about, I think it's, you're right. This is a very fascinating book. I've read a lot of near-death experiences, not of course as many as you have, talked to people that have had them. And this kind of goes over some common themes. Near-death experiences are very, they're unique. I think they're tailored to the individual that has them, but there are some overarching things we can say about near-death experiencers and near-death experiences. And one of the things you said right off the bat is the majority of people who have an NDE return with the mission. You said some keep it to themselves, but because of fear, but a lot of people come back and have this renewed sense of purpose.
Well, hey, when you come back, literally, most of us anyway, want to get on top of the rooftop or the roof of the highest building we can find or the highest tree we can find. And we want to shout out to the whole world, there is no death and God is. Mm-hmm. That's it. There is no death. God really is. And you want everybody to know that, and you want to scream it out again and again. And I try to counsel near-death experiencers and say, remember the first rule of discipleship. Remember the first rule of discipleship. Don't freak the natives. Don't kill you.
Wow, that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
Don't freak the natives.
yeah,
So, be kind in your enthusiasm, in spilling the beans, so to speak, and in talking to various individuals, and be kind and letting them know that that you've had an experience that has enabled you to see and learn and experience a greater reality, and that's what you would like to share.
yeah. So, I want to go over some of the things you talked about in the book. You said that actually we were talked about the word God before, but you mentioned in the book that 90 to 95% of people that come back believing in God.
Yeah, God, Allah, deity,
Right.
you know, whatever you want to call God. But most of the people in the United States, of course, use God, God.
Right.
But again, that greater reality. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
90 to 95%. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
Most of them come back head over heels in love with God. And I'm going to use that term because that's in our cultural knowledge, our cultural reality. So I'm going to use the term God.
Well, I think it's the simplest term. I think we need to let go of some things, maybe, like you said, this man on a throne with a beard. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the Santa Claus version. We're talking about a love, a presence, and in our language, God is the simplest way to put it.
Well, we come back with a new gospel,
Mm-hmm.
and that's of forgiveness and compassion. That's the new gospel. And we're all infected with that. We all become preachers of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the book, you say that one of the questions that asked of us when we cross, or we ask ourselves, I guess, is who did you help? And you were saying that people come back more compassionate and altruistic, and you even use the term, born again in a sense.
Well, I suspect that we use the word God, God. This idea of maleness or father.
Mm-hmm.
I call those habit phrases. It's like this idea of maleness. We've grown up with that. We've heard it. We've seen it. We've read it. We've spoken of it ourselves, maybe in our own lives as a child. It was this father figure type. But the God near-death experiencers find is bigger than the God of Holy Writ. It's like, is it the same as the God in church or the God in the Bible? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of that concept or that reality, but no in the sense of how it's written in the Bible.
Right.
Not all parts of the Bible, of course, but the overall usage of God in the Bible is father, daddy figure. You don't get that. You don't get that so much in the near-death experience. However, for children, I mean, hold on to your hats for this. With children, they see God as a father or a grandfather. Somehow, God is a father figure. But I just love this. I love working with kids because there's no hesitancy at all. They'll just go right up to that father figure in their experience and say, is this what you really look like?
Yeah.
And invariably, you're going to love this, invariably, that father figure will, just like poof. And and there's this incredible bright light. It's like that father figure turns into this incredible bright light, and that's who God really is this incredible energy, this incredible power. It's like God becomes a light burst. And and again, I love it with kids. They'll often even go to angels, and they'll say, is this what you really look like? And there too, there's this big change or poof or big alteration in what they're seeing, and it goes from a figure we can recognize to light. So somehow, some way, the reality of what exists in the sense of deity, in the sense of heaven, in the sense of angels, is really more of different variations of light. There is this light burst. And with adults say that burst, that light, that allness of God is so powerful that it is brighter and more powerful than 10,000 suns. Instantly you're fried, but there's no pain. You can't fool this light. This light talks to you, knows all about you. You can't mess with this light. It's just incredible. But again, with children, when they're talking about light, when they're talking about that greater power, they talk about it in terms of 3 different lights. Not 1, 3. Children describe this really raw, powerful, strong light, but it has no color. But it is so strong. And then there's the light that is dark or bright, or not bright, but dark or black. Sometimes they say it has purple tinges to it. There's something about this dark or black light that is so comforting, so cozy, so healing, so just almost like a sanctuary. And then there's this white light or this really bright light. Some call it, maybe a little silver in it, a little gold in it, maybe a little yellow, but this incredibly bright white light. And that's, that's a light that talks to you, that you can't fool this light. This light knows all about you. You can get in dialogue with this light. But the children, again, are so specific about what these lights are.
Yeah.
That white light that so many people and psychics and near-death experiencers or people who've gone through a spiritual transformation, they talk about the white light. And I say the near-death experience is not a white light experience. It is a bright light experience. So when they're talking about that incredible light, the children say that's Father light. And in talking about this dark or black light, the children say that's Mother light. And then when you're talking about this raw, powerful, strong light, the kids say that's God's light. And then they say the Father light and the Mother light, they come from God's light. And that's the real light. That's the real powerful, true light, is this incredible thing that you really can't describe. You can't put color to it, that it is so awesome that it's beyond words.
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating. So when we talk about this this God, like, because we talked earlier about the word God, and another word I think we associate with God sometimes is judgment. So I think a lot of people, when you say God, they think judge, right? And you talk about it in the near-death experiences, very rarely, if ever,
Yeah.
judgment.
Yeah, you don't hear judgment in near-death experiences. You might hear wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
You might hear some dialogue about that between you and whoever it is you're addressing, but you don't hear judgment. You just don't. Um, I love how people are challenged to address this light, to put a name on this light. We've already talked about God,
Right.
but it's like, some people call it the supreme being, some people call it divine power, the divine principle, some people call it the force. There's all kinds of different names that people invent or make up or decide. Yes, that's the word, but still, this idea of names, it's like you go beyond names. It's like being bathed in the light on the other side of death. It is more than a name. It's more than life changing. And with your permission, I'd like to read just a little bit from the book.
Sure.
Because it's just so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And to anyone who's viewing, sorry, I'm going to have to tip my glasses to read it. But yeah, bear with me.
Yeah, you're fine.
That light is the very essence, the heart and soul, the all-consuming consummation of ecstatic ecstasy. It is indeed a million suns of compressed love, dissolving everything unto itself, annihilating thought and cell, vaporizing humanness and history, unto that great brilliance of all that is, all that ever was, and all that ever will be. That light is God. No one has to tell you,
Mm-hmm.
And you no longer believe in God afterward, for belief implies doubt. There is no more doubt, none. You now know God, and you know that you know, and you're never the same again, and you know who you are. You are a child of God, a cell in that greater body, an extension of that one force, an expression from the one mind. No more can you forget your identity, or deny, or ignore, or pretend it away. There is one, and you are of the one. One. That light does this to you. It cradles your soul in the heart of its pulse beat and fills you with love shine. And you melt away as the you think you are, reforming as the you really are. And you are reborn because at last you remember God as nameless presence, existent beyond what words can tell, a conscious intelligence and creative principle so great that it envelops and permeates all levels, all things, all possibilities, all potential, all aspects of creation, all belief systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's the truth.
It's interesting because when you read that, there reminded me of another quote from the book. You said, "The greatest fear we have in living our life on earth is not what might happen to us, but what might be expected from us if we recognize who we are."
Amen.
Yeah.
That's the real truth. Amen to that. Yeah, God is without gender. God is so powerful, so huge, so big, so great that how do we convey that to someone else? We do our best.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to put into language, but I think another lesson is that we are all more powerful than we think we are as well, and we think of ourselves as these frail, temporary creatures, accidents of the uncaring cosmos.
You know, I talk a lot about the soul in the book
Hmm.
because they did. And all these experiences, and bear in mind my research base is nearly 5,000 adults and children. So
Right,
this is a lot of voices.
right.
Been doing this for 43 years, so it's a lot of voices in a lot of parts of our world and other worlds. By that I mean our nation and other nations. So my research base is quite extensive, and and I'm going to say almost everyone because there's always an exception somewhere, but almost everyone says yes, we have a soul. Although the curriculum of life is written over there, carrying out that curriculum and developing the muscles needed to fulfill it is done here in a body on planet Earth.
Hmm.
And our soul is what keeps us on track. It's sort of like that guide or that Jiminy Cricket or that voice or that sense deep within us. That's our soul. And you know, some interesting ways of looking at this. Um, this truth of the soul, the quickest way to access our soul is through prayer, through meditation, and through silence.
Hmm.
You know, those are the three. It's not sitting in a church pew. It's not reading a book. It's through meditation, through prayer, and through silence. It's you tuning into and becoming part of this greater truth.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word soul, and I think language. I think people sometimes trip up over language because as I've been getting into this, I like the word like higher self. That because you talked about in the book about how our soul can actually have a different will than our personality. So like our personality is who we are in the body, right? But we've got that higher self or that soul that might have a different agenda than we do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's part of us. That's what lives with us because that's who we are. We're not just a personality.
Yeah,
You can call it a higher self. I still call it a soul.
yeah, it's fine.
Or you know, some people call it our our divine spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that idea of something greater
Yeah,
than what we are. That's who we are. We're all of that.
yeah,
You
we're all.
know, mind, body, spirit. We're all of that.
Yeah, I love the story you told in the book about the two high school girls that were killed in the car crash.
Oh, that is just such a ah, story. And it made the newspapers way back in Idaho. I believe it was. I can't remember whether it was Twin Falls, Idaho, or Boise, Idaho, but I'm going to say Twin Falls, Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And it was graduation time for these two girls. They were best friends, and they were in a car together, traveling along. And I want to just sort of back up a little bit and talk about these girls. One of them, for a year before this happened, knew that she was going to die. She was going to die just before she graduated, and she was going to die violently. And she told her parents. Well, her parents freaked out, of course,
Yeah.
and it just went on and on and on. So finally, they took her to a psychiatrist who sat down with the girl and did a lot of tests, and, you know, spent a lot of time with her. and reported back to the parents, there's nothing wrong with your child.
Mm-hmm.
She's perfectly sane. There's not a thing wrong with her. Just let her speak what she's saying. So they did. So that moment came. I believe it was like 3 days before graduation. These two girls were in this car. They came to this intersection, and there was some yahoo coming in the other direction and didn't pay any attention to the light. It was on green. They could go, but he hit, in the driver's section, and both girls were killed on impact. It was a terrible accident. But since both girls were very well known in the school, it became front page news for this town, for our town, and everybody knew about it. They had to have the funeral in a gymnasium because a lot of people came out, and everybody was just so heartbroken that these two lovely, beautiful young girls were killed in such a, and then the guy turned out to be drunk. So, I mean, it was such a thoughtless way. And a year later, and I found out about this through Johnny Lister. Johnny Lister was Idaho's greatest and foremost astrologer. He did most of his work in Sun Valley. He was a personal friend of a lot of movie stars and this kind of. He was a musician, but he was also an astrologer. And he came to Boise, Idaho, where I was. And I took my initial classes in astrology from Johnny Lister. Mm-hmm. And Johnny and I became really good friends. And one day he called me on the phone. He says, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And I finally got him calmed down and said, "Johnny, what's going on?" He said, "I've had both of these mothers visit me singly, not together, mm-hmm. because after the funeral, the two families didn't have anything to do with each other again. They went their separate ways. But both mothers knew Johnny Lister and came to him and told their story. They had been awakened in the middle of the night by their dead daughter. And the daughters had come to explain why they died and why they died violently. Each of the mothers got the same story.
Wow.
And the mothers then told Johnny and said, "What are we going to do?" And then Johnny called me and said, "What do I tell these women?" And I said, have them get a hold of the psychiatrist who first worked with one of the girls, and tell the psychiatrist what's going on, and have the psychiatrist meet with both families. Both families come together with a psychiatrist and have and out loud tell their stories, mm-hmm. because one didn't know about the other. Mm-hmm. So that day happened, and in the psychiatrist's office, the two families came together and told their stories. Mm-hmm. Here's the story that they told. And basically, I'm telling it from the one girl's point of view, but the other one said yes. The one girl who was driving was the one who got all the messages. So she was very clear that to die this way and this manner with her friend was the only reason she was alive in this lifetime. this was her job. This was her mission. This was her duty. This is what she was here for. Because the other one, the soul of the other girl, had never died in a violent death, never had a violent death. In all of her many lives, speaking in terms of reincarnation, she had never died violently. And she was afraid about it. She was concerned about it. She needed a companion. And so on the other side, the soul level, the one soul agreed to help the other soul who needed a little help.
Wow.
So both girls were aware that that was the only reason they were alive in this lifetime. They were made aware of it before they died. Both girls wanted their grieving parents to know why, all the whys and whats.
Yeah.
And by coming to their parents and telling them, and then the parents meeting with a psychiatrist who would know how to handle this, a lot of pain and grief just disappeared.
Yeah.
And they began to realize that it was love here, that love was at play, that it seemed horrible, it seemed incomprehensible, but yet it was an act of love, pure love. And that healed to the extent that you can heal both parents, even the psychiatrist, Johnny, and myself.
Yeah.
To actually see in action how the soul can work.
You know, it's interesting. That's why I wanted you to relate that story. I work with a lot of parents, and a lot of parents are listeners to my program because my daughter passed away when she was 15. And we always ask that why, why did this happen? Why is a life, from our perspective, cut short? And as I was reading that story, I was reminded Shayna, she passed on June 24th on Mother's Day, which was about 6 weeks before that, I guess. She was playing with her cousins and she made a comment like, when I die, I want to be buried under a tree. I want to be cremated and buried under a tree. She was 15 years old. She was healthy and nobody knew why she said it. My wife and I didn't even know she had said it until after she had passed. We were talking to my other daughter about whether we were going to cremate her body or not. And we decided to do that. And my other daughter said, okay, that's what she wanted because she said that on Mother's Day. And we thought, why would a healthy 15-year-old just say that out of the blue? And then 6 weeks later, she had passed. And then we get back the confirmation that that's what she wanted. So I do believe that there is, on some level, I think, I like what you said, the personality has one piece of knowledge and maybe one will even, but the soul may have a different will for what's going to be happening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The soul is our spirit part. It's that part of us that is always attached. You can say to the other side, you can say to the greater reality, you can say to the greater truth, but it's always attached to that greatness. Mm-hmm. And the soul knows what we're here for and what we're here to do. We don't always agree with that Jiminy Cricket that's giving us advice, saying, no, I don't want to do that. We're not always privy to that kind of knowledge because that might get in the way of our living our life. Mm-hmm. We need to live our life to the best that we can. And so the soul very seldom comes forward with advanced knowledge or, the whys of life. Right. I mean, why was I ever raped? And became pregnant and miscarried and had 3 near-death experiences in 3 months. Yeah. I had just had a divorce. I was starting to relive my life again, tried to redefine myself. And suddenly I was flipped
Yeah.
into Neverland,
Right.
and I'm taking off and doing things that there was just no way to do them or know about them. Hardly any money, hardly a dime to my name, and it just went out and did it.
Yeah, you
You
did.
know, how can you explain that? 43 years of research, and nobody paid a dime for that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. And nobody told me how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It came from my heart. It came from that knowledge of as a child, being a cop's kid, raised in a police station. So I was familiar with police investigative techniques. That was part of me.
Right.
And then that voice, not directing me step by step, but always being there, that comfort, that even if I thought I was crazy, there was always that comfort, that greater oneness that was always with me and guiding me, even though I didn't know what I was doing. Yet I did know what I was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've seen this with children, people of all ages. Why do they die? Why are they raped? Why are they tortured? Why do all these things happen? And yet, when we quiet ourselves, when we allow for prayer, when we allow for that silence, when we get our ego out of the way, when we just let the tears roll, get the ego out of the way and say, God, I don't understand this. I don't understand any of this, but I know you do. I know you're here. I know you're in charge. I know there's a greater truth, and I am willing to accept that truth. Here I am. Use me. Use me in your way, your will, to the greater good of all concerned.
Mm.
You know, being in that greater truth. That greater truth led me across the United States all by myself twice.
Yeah.
To move here, to do what I did. There was so many times I could have been killed, or so many situations I was in that were just really not the kind of situations anybody would want to be in. But yet I knew I was there for a reason. I knew I was okay. I knew that I was doing the work that needed to be done, and I was doing it the right way. And
Yeah.
that's all I needed to know.
Yeah.
I didn't need to know anything else.
You know, that's really interesting, and it's I don't know, ironic is the right word, or that for me, I'd heard this my whole life, that God is in control, and trust and have faith, but it wasn't until after the worst thing that happened to me, my daughter passing away, that I really came to believe that. I believe that now, and I look at someone like yourself and what you went through, and like you just said, I'm sure when you were going through this, the rape and the miscarriage and everything, and you had to be thinking, this is awful, this is the end, this is, but it was a whole new beginning for you. I mean, you wouldn't be where you are if you hadn't gone through that.
Sometimes we need a little nudge in life.
Yeah.
That's kind of a nice way of saying we need a little help,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of that nudge. How do you explain anything? I mean, I was born out of wedlock at a time when that was against the law.
Yeah.
People today don't think anything of it, but in my day, it was really, really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was punished for that.
Mm.
How did I get raised in the reclaimed deserts of southern Idaho by Norwegians?
Mm.
I was from the Sognefjord.
Mm.
How do you explain that? How do you explain being raised by two people in their 50s and 60s who were Victorians,
Mm.
who survived the Prussian War, World War I, had one son in World War II. The other son, didn't qualify. He couldn't go. Who never had a daughter, always wanted a daughter. And how we ever got together. I mean, my mother, I was 2 months old, and my mother had a rented room in a person's house in Twin Falls, Idaho, and there were no children allowed. So she had to find a room. She had to find some other lodging. And it was raining, and she was a waitress. She had no money. What's she going to do? She had no family there. She had no way to turn. In those days, we didn't have rescue groups like we have today.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have various agencies that you could turn to. They didn't exist. So you either made it or you didn't, period.
Yeah.
Nobody caught you.
Yeah.
And so my mother in downtown Twin Falls, Idaho, they had street lamps in those days. They didn't have traffic lights like we have now, the street lamps. And she had her arms around a street lamp. She was crying. And Daddy's song, SOGN, Norwegian, Daddy's song had to be walking by. And he saw this lovely young woman crying, holding onto a street lamp, and it's raining. So he went over to her and said, what's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And she explained the problem. Where's she going to do with her new little 2-month-old baby? He says, oh, no problem. We have an extra bedroom. My wife loves children. Come stay with us. We won't charge you a lot, but come be with us.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 2 months, I was with the songs.
Hmm.
But an interesting thing is, my crib was not in my mother's room. My crib was in the songs room. And I did not know that my mother was my mother until I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that caused all kinds. I mean, I've had a really screwed up, odd life. I've had 5 fathers, 2 mothers.
Yeah.
And I was born with dyslexia and synesthesia. So how do you find the world? I mean, how do you speak and walk and talk and dress like other people do when that was never part of your reality?
Yeah.
So I became a researcher at the age of 5. I did my first double-blind research project at the age of 5 years old because I wanted to find out the truth of things. And from that moment on, of course, excuse me, what happened to me in the first grade. From then on, I just decided all adults were foolish. Why listen to an adult? They don't know anything. And that, thank you very much, but I would go out and I would do my own research and I would find my own truth.
Yeah.
So here you have a 5-6-year-old who's just and it was World War II and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and I just decided all adults are crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go find my own truth myself. Do you know I've been doing that ever since?
And that's what you've done. And you've been an incredible force in the world because of it.
But look at that. Because of that.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
So how do you explain people that are raped and cut up and maybe tortured or for whatever reason, things happen in their life that challenge them in ways that sometimes they can handle, sometimes they can't. We like to say that became the fodder or the fertile ground that enabled you to learn what you learned and do what you did. I mean, look at Winston Churchill. If he hadn't gone through all that he did growing up, and by the way, he had a near-death experience, he would not have been the driving force that England needed to survive.
Right.
So we look at these things that are so horrific, and we think, well, are we helping anybody? Maybe we're helping the nurse, maybe we're helping the doctor, maybe we're helping our family, maybe we're helping ourselves, or maybe we are bringing ourselves to a brink because that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about another controversial thing in your book. We talk, not a lot of near-death experiencers are like to talk about the less than positive experiences. Some people call them hellish. I noticed when you talk about it in your book, you're very careful not to use the words positive and negative. So what are your thoughts about those experiences?
Well, certainly, I had the hellish experiences, the heavenly experiences. I found 4 different types of near-death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
One, the initial experience, that is something like the friendly voice or the loving nothingness or maybe a quick in and out of body experience. A lot of people have these, especially children.
Mm-hmm.
But that single, quick, easy experience, if you want to call it easy, challenges that individual and wakes them up. And you can have the same after effects from something like that you can have from a more intense experience. Then we have the frightening or the hellish experience. In my research base, 1 out of 7 had that.
Mm-hmm.
We have the more pleasant or heaven-like experience. Mm-hmm. But not even 50% had that. Something like 45-46% had that kind of experience. And then I had the transcendent experience. The transcendent experience, I noticed, normally that's very, very intense. And it has nothing to do with you as a person. It has nothing to do with your life or how you lived it, usually. Mm-hmm. Usually, you don't have life reviews, usually, in a transcendent experience. This type seems to be more centered around history as we know it, about life itself and what you can do to make a difference in this world. So it's usually action-oriented. Mm-hmm. Or oriented toward, again, making a difference in the world. Your life reviews come from your hellish or your heavenly experiences. That's where you get your life reviews. Mm-hmm. It's almost as, and so those are the various types.
Right.
Now, when we're focusing on the main aspects that can occur during a near-death experience, certainly one of them is this idea of meeting the very hellish or the very heavenly experience. We have all these different layers of experiences and the people that have them. But invariably, with those who have the more frightening or fearful or hellish experience, or even those that have the more heavenly or more pleasant or more wonderful experience. It's almost as if on the other side, when you get to the various levels on the other side of death,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a layer cake. There's all these different layers.
Mm-hmm.
Some are more pleasant, some are not pleasant. So you have all these different layers. So the other side are all these different layers of life and existence and who we are and what we can be. And the more hellish experiences, or the more frightening, are the more dense and the more the sound, that heavy dense vibrations. Sound tends to be more disquieting. Those that have the more heavenly experiences, those tend to be lighter, more subtle, more refined, colors and sound kind of thing. It's almost as if when you get on the other side, there's this layer cake,
Yeah.
of all kinds of levels. And some people who go the other way, or wind up going the other way, or are told or pulled into the other way, they can go deeper and deeper, slower, more and more dense, more and more heavy, more and more dark.
Mm-hmm.
Those that go into the finer levels, they get lighter and lighter and brighter and brighter and more graceful and comforting. And it's almost, to me, it's almost as if there's this incredible layer cake or construct, this incredible construct,
Mm-hmm.
that is powered by our choice.
Yeah.
Our choices in life, the decisions we made, that determines where we wind up. We can wind up in the more dense levels, or we can wind up in the more brighter, refined levels. But what I've found with the children and the adults, no matter how far down or how high up you go, there is that deeper sense of choice, that is that deeper sense of truth, that deeper sense of our soul, our soul's truth, that determines where we wind up. And God doesn't judge us, we judge ourselves. And that you don't have to stay in the bottom levels. You can, through choice, begin to raise and move up to the higher levels. This construct, it just, for me, it was like that great amen, because there is no top and there is no bottom. There is no way anybody's going to rot forever in hell. There is no way anybody is going to play a harp on a cloud forever. I mean, neither direction. Neither direction works.
Right.
And that through our own efforts, through our own willingness to change, we can move up, we can move out, we can do and be more.
Yeah, I think it's, I found it fascinating that you talked about it in the book. And I know there are a small percentage, or there's a percentage, I should say, people that have, I've heard them called less than positive experiences, hellish experiences. I know Howard Storm talks about it. There's another guy, I can't remember his name. It was an Indian man who went to a hellish experience. But the thing I noticed about all of them is they were always temporary. that people were there. They seemed to get what they needed. And even in their death experience, they typically get out of that bad state. So what I gather is that these things are designed, for our own best interest. And maybe sometimes that's something that we have to go through.
Well, I'd like to share with you an experience I had that helps us all not to judge.
Okay, great. Yes.
And this was a large meeting, a meeting place like a convention center, and lots of people were there. There wasn't even standing room. And when I was through with my talk, I invited anybody in the audience to come up and share their near-death experience. One man and one woman volunteered to come up. The man was first. The man, I would guess, would be maybe 30, 32, 29, 30, and he shared his experience. And it was one of these beautiful heavenly experiences. Oh, it was so beautiful. I swear there wasn't a dry eye in the place. And then he shocked everybody. I mean, we were all stunned. He said, this was the worst thing that ever happened to him in his life. It interfered with his life. It messed up his life. He wished it had never happened. It was horrible. That he was sorry he ever had something like this. And then this woman jumped up, and I guess maybe she's in her middle or later 30s. And she just started talking right away. And she described this experience of hers that was dark, 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 dark. And there was these shrieking wind and clouds and pressure. And she found herself thrown into a lake and a whirlpool, and it was going round and round, and she was being sucked down. And she was just terrified. There was so much fear and so much horror, and she had to fight and fight and fight to get to the shore, and she finally pulled herself up out of the lake, and that was the end of her experience. And again, she shocked the whole audience, and she said, this was the best thing that ever happened to her. She was so grateful that something like this happened to her, because it showed her that no matter what happens in life, you can handle it, you can save yourself, you can do better.
Wow. So
here you have a beautiful, blissful experience. The man hated. You had this horrible, frightening experience. The woman loved. Yeah. We're going back here now to this truth, this reality, that it's you. It's not some heavenly Saint Peter that's judging you.
Right.
It's not some God that's waving his stick and saying, you should have done things better.
Right.
It's in near-death experiences, we confront ourselves and who we really are.
Wow, that's profound. We're at about an hour, and I could talk to you all day, literally. So we've covered a lot of the book, and I want to talk about after effects, but we can do that next time, because next time we're going to talk about the children's experiences, and we'll cover in near-death experience after effects the next time around. So I want to thank you for doing this again. It's been fantastic. I want to tell everybody the book is Dying to Know You: Proof of God in Near-Death Experience. And as I said, we covered a lot of it, but there's a lot more here, so I do recommend you definitely get the book. But P.M.H, it's been an honor having you on again.
Well, I want you to know it's an honor to be with you. I just feel such a heart-to-heart here.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful I can be part of your process in coming to the truth within yourself and your own family. This is a blessing that you are giving to the world, doing this this show and helping other people through your grief and through your desire to learn and grow and transcend. That you are helping so many people, and I'm just so grateful to be part of this.
Well, thank you. We'll definitely do it again. So I'll see you in a week.
Okie doke. Bye-bye.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Hey, thanks for watching. Before you leave, I'd like to just remind you, you can always find me at www.grief2growth.com. That's grief2growth.com. And you can schedule a free half-hour consultation if you'd like. Also, before you leave, please click on the like button here, click on subscribe, and click on the bell. By clicking like, YouTube will show the video to more people, and by subscribing and clicking the bell, you'll be notified when I release new material. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.